Hello, hello. Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining me. Um, Not quite sure what episode this is going to be because I've recorded a couple in between this time, but I wanted this to be a recap on my first episode talking about validation. And I feel like maybe a couple of the points that I made in that were a little contradictory. Hi, Daisy. They're they were maybe a little contradictory because essentially what I said was people offering their advice when I didn't ask for it. And that's kind of what I did that whole first episode was give advice about something without it being asked for. But I guess I kind of wanted to clear the air and say I didn't necessarily mean for that to be advice or for it to be taken that way. If it did get taken that way, I hope that it was of value and you got something out of it that was positive and beneficial. But essentially, what I don't want to do is contradict myself and like give points of reason that aren't, you know, to my values and my standards. So essentially, what I want to say is I'm not offering advice to anybody. I'm just sharing my story, and for those who feel compelled to listen and to hear me out, I appreciate it and thank you for doing so. But yeah, I don't want it to be misconstrued for advice or anything like that because, like I said in the first episode, I'm going to therapy right now. I'm in therapy, speaking to a therapist about my problems. And the last thing I feel like I should be able to give is advice, but I want to do it in a way that people can relate to me if they feel inclined to, but not necessarily have to feel like they are, if that makes sense. So yeah, those are just a couple of the things that I wanted to address from the first episode. And then another thing was I'm working towards getting to that 80-20% where I'm 80% happy and 20% sad. Not quite sure what it was. I guess since maybe my last therapy session, I had created goals for myself, which is something that I hadn't done in quite some time. And one of those goals was to, essentially just be nicer to myself. Because I've noticed a lot of the time I can be pretty hard on myself, and I don't mean to be that way. But, for somebody who strives for validation, I suppose, as I was saying in the first episode, that just kind of happens. But luckily, I've had a realization that um, I'm a pretty unique individual. I don't have a whole lot of people that are similar to me in a lot of ways. I mean, similar to me in some ways, but I haven't found somebody who like really genuinely like is 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 a lot like me, really. And not to sound cocky, because there is a big difference between cockiness and confidence. And one of those things is comparison to other people. When you compare yourself to other people and you view yourself as better than those people, that's where cockiness comes from. It's because you're looking at others as lesser than you, when in all reality, we're all just humans. And that's just simply not the truth. Because I mean, shit, somebody could think that your version of yourself that you think is, the bee's knees or just the absolute tits of this world. Another person could have a completely different opinion on how you live your life and maybe your morality and the decisions behind that. I don't know if I necessarily have a topic of discussion for this one. I kind of wanted to just be free format and things I was thinking about. And one of those things was from a podcast I listened to earlier today. I'm sure a lot of you know of the TV show The Office, and Dwight Schrute, also known as Rainn Wilson, his real name, is apparently the nephew to my first psychology professor that I had in college. My first psychology professor I ever had, I guess, ever. I didn't know anything about psychology, and honestly, it's kind of crazy because I feel like I was a really fucking dumb kid. I grew up without understanding a lot of just like I feel like concepts of the world that people just like grasped immediately. Like a DJ, I did a report on DJs as probably let's think back, it's probably like a third or fourth grader. I did a book report on disc jockeys, and my dumbass thought that a disc jockey was somebody who, I don't know if anybody listening has ever shot like skeet or trap shooting or anything like that, but I thought a disc jockey was somebody who loaded the discs for people to shoot trap or skeet. Stupid, I know. But it's not that. Where was I going with it? Hold up. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I didn't know what a disc jockey was or a DJ was until like 3, 4 years ago when I started doing the damn thing. And I did a book report on it when I was a kid. So there was just like things in my life that never really, like, just, they never stuck. They never really hit me in a way that they meant something, or I I took the time to really think about them more. But anyhow, I was in this psychology class my freshman year of college, and the professor, in the movies when people talk, or how there's like that one professor in college that's just like, I don't know even if this is in the movies, it's just kind of how I thought. Basically, you have that one professor that just like says all these things and has all this like intricate knowledge about the world. You're like, yeah, that's exactly what I've been looking for like my path of thinking. Well, this was that guy for me. He introduced the class with like some shit about sex or something like that, and like being an 18-year-old boy going into college for the first time, and this is the first class that had mentioned sex, and it was a psychology class, and it was like, so it was like, maybe the idea of like sex on the mind or like stuff like that. And yeah, it was just like pretty much the first day was really horny. I remember that pretty vividly. And this this professor at some point mentioned that he was the uncle of Rainn Wilson. And being in a small town in Idaho, you're like, yeah, I'm sure he just came up with this shit. Like he went to school and like, got his degree, and now he's teaching kids and just kind of comes up with the stories every year to see what they'll see is true or not true. And up until today, when a podcast came out on Rainn Wilson's podcast, Metaphysical something, I can't remember the other name of it. It's like Metaphysical Cheeseburger or something like that. I don't know, something weird, but Metaphysical something. And they had they had Rhett Diesner, the psychology um basically guru on there, and it was the same guy who had taught me my freshman year of college in my psychology class. And also, side note, it's going to be a little tangent here for a second. That psychology class is where uh, the girl who I had just been in a relationship with had seen me for the first time. And she told me these stories about how she would wait for me after tests to hope that I would notice her. And, these years in class where I didn't. And it's kind of funny thinking back now because now I love that girl to death. And yeah, I don't know, just like the timing and all that of things is it's interesting. But anyway, back to that podcast. The podcast was on the topic of I want to say it was the psychology of beauty. So essentially what they talked about was what makes something beautiful. And the co-host, I can't remember his name, I apologize. He was talking in the very beginning about how he has friendships, he garnishes friendships with people that he's noticed are physically attractive to him. And that struck me as really interesting because he almost seemed ashamed about saying that. And don't get me wrong, it sounds very superficial saying that, but I think, and this is just me spitballing here from the hip, I think that humans genuinely, excuse me, just generally do that from the get-go without meaning to. And they brought up a good point of saying, wait, what did they say? Now I feel dumb because I was like, yeah, they brought up a really good point. It was on my brain, but I was thinking a mile a minute there for a second. They were he was saying like I've noticed that the people that I find more physically attractive, I always deem as initially, from the start, as more attract or not more attractive obviously, but like smarter and like more intellectual and had like a deeper sense of just grasp on the world maybe. That could be a poor way of saying it, but that's kind of what I got from it. And it really kind of backed me up because, yes, I find this woman that I was in a relationship with extremely beautiful in a physical sense, but I noticed that there was such a beauty to the cognizance and just like the idea behind her thought. And it made me realize, or it made me question, I guess, better. Do I do that? Do I only keep people around me that I find are physically attractive? And it didn't take me long to realize that, yeah, I do. And while that may seem superficial, um, actually, it is superficial, but it's not to say that I don't have friends that I don't find attractive. And it made me realize that you find people attractive in ways more than physical, a lot more than you do physically. And it helped me, I feel like, understand human nature in a little bit better of a way. Because while I realize that I am physically attracted to this person, I now have to realize if I'm mentally attracted to this person. And that's why this recent breakup has been so difficult on me. And I know I keep bringing it up. And I know you're like, oh, dude, quit whining about your ex. I'm not whining about my ex. I'm not even necessarily complaining. Because if I were complaining, you would know. You would know that I had a different idea and the topic of things that I wanted to talk about. And that's not where I'm trying to get. It's not who I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be a better person. And a quote that really sticks to me from a podcast that I listen to pretty frequently, I haven't in a while. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and that's what got me started into wanting to do my own, was Steve-O's Steve-O's Wild Ride. And everybody knows Steve-O. I mean, at least I would assume anybody who listens to this would. If you don't, I guess, if I have to explain, he's just look him up. Look up Steve-O, Jackass. Look up any of that, and you'll get an idea of who the man is. But so this man's had probably the craziest experiences and crazy life path that almost anybody can imagine. And this quote that stuck with me was, I'm constantly working, and I might butcher this, I apologize, but I'm constantly working on being the man that the girl of my dreams deserves to be with. And nothing's stuck with me as much as that, because I realized the other day, I was like, I don't like being alone. I do like having physical affection, and it's something that, from not being in a relationship for a little bit, for a while now, is something that I lack. And it's truly something that I cherish and really, I don't want to say that I need it, because like nobody necessarily needs that, but to me and for my mental health, I feel like it would be necessary. I hate saying that. It sounds really, yeah, wishy-washy or whatever, but I I love love. I love feeling affection, and I love giving affection. I really do. But I will say it is hard to date and be with somebody who has mental struggles, no matter what they may be, because essentially you can't get into their mind, you can't get into their brain. So like you can't really understand how they're feeling or what they're going through. You just kind of have to hear them out. And that's one thing that I feel like I took for granted with my past relationship, is that I was allowed to express my emotions and express my qualms with life. But it got to a point where I couldn't return those feelings. And it's hard to admit that for myself, but it's also relieving. And one of the big things that she's been, stressing to me is, dude, you got to do things for yourself. Like you got to make yourself happy. And I have been doing the things for myself to make me happy. And let's give a little applaud. I I do feel like this past week I have been at an 80/20. To get back to the original point, I've been 80% happy and only 20% sad. And I've realized that maybe, yeah, she was right. Maybe I did need to start doing these things for just me. And one of those things, to hype myself up a little bit, was I've been working on music for 4 years, feeling like a complete imposter. A lot of, excuse me, I got the hiccups really bad right now. A lot of artists, they struggle with this thing called imposter syndrome, whereas for those of you who don't know, it's when you're a part and doing something within a scene or a certain, subdivision of something that you you sorry, my roommate's yelling at his dog and I keep hearing him. Um Shoot, just just lost my train of thought. Where was I at? Oh, yeah, I've been working on this music thing for years, and just it was one of those things where I was starting to struggle with validation, like the imposter syndrome. It's where you feel like no matter what you do, you're an imposter in the thing that you're doing. So I essentially felt like when I was making music, it wasn't something that was going to be relative or relatable to another human, or that they could like it or anything like that. I lacked validation from other people in saying that my music was good, which I will say they were probably right. And it took that honesty, that genuine, like, hey, this needs improvement, for me to realize, like, oh yeah, they're right. My music does need to get better, and it's gotten what I deem to be better, because music is subjective. It's gotten to a point now where I sent it to a record label, and they accepted it. They're gonna release it, and I'm gonna have my first record label release. And if it weren't for the advice of being told to, and it wasn't advice, I wouldn't say, it was just a suggestion to start doing things for myself, that I realized that she was very correct. I haven't been doing the things for myself that I deem as valuable. Not to say that I haven't done some of those things, but I've definitely just gotten more into a spot in my life where I feel like I'm being funny, and I'm being lighthearted, and I'm being kind, and I'm being the things that I wanted to be. And I guess, since I mentioned that I've been through some less than fortunate times, I could explain one of those times is related to a suicide that was a deep, a, a just a really, really close friend. So close that we lived together. And that was coming up on 2 years ago. And it's one of those things that it's just, it really just turned my world upside down. Like, you don't wake up one day expecting your friend to not be alive, right? And I know it sounds really cliche. People will be like, yeah, I woke up that day and things just fell off. Like, something fell off, things didn't feel right. And I can attest to that feeling. It was the craziest thing, man. Like, I thought I woke up, and I actually woke up to his mother. Oh, just kicked my camera. I woke up to his mother. She walked into my room, his mom. Beautiful lady, we're very close now. She walked into my room, and she asked me if I had seen her son. And I told her no. I told her the last time I'd saw him was the night before. And this pains me too, is because he owed me money, because I helped him cover some money for rent that day, and he made enough money to pay me back the night that he passed. And so she shows up in the next morning, because he had apparently texted her some things that scared her. I mean, things that me as a parent wouldn't like to read. And it's about an hour drive from where she lived to where we were at. And she showed up at my house, and I was still sleeping. Like, I don't know how she got in. I guess we left the front door unlocked or something. But can you imagine? Can you actually? I mean, this is hard. This is hard for any parents. And, like, trigger warning for anybody who's been through any of this shit. any of this shit. Like, I just want to give a forewarning that this story is not probably gonna get a whole lot better, but I definitely need to, like, get my shit off my chest. So, not shit, but just these things that I think about, because this was 2 years ago, and I think about this day specifically pretty much every single day. So she comes to our house, she gets in somehow, and she comes and knocks on my door, wakes me up. My dog wakes me up. I'm like, hey, what's up? And I didn't feel very well that day. I remember this. I felt pretty sick to the stomach, probably drank too much the night before. I don't know, I have bad habits. And I remember I was gonna call in sick for work, actually. I don't know, I was sick. I was just sick. I was gonna call in sick for work. And I, she comes to the house and she's like, well, he sent me a message last night and it scared me. It really scared me, and I'm worried for his life, and I'm scared of what's going on. And I didn't really get much more context outside of that. And I maybe I shouldn't share the details of what happened next, but let's just say that I was the person who happened to discover him. And that sight replays in my mind at least once a day, and it has for the past 2 years. And another thing that I get reminded of is I left to go get some lunch after all of the carnage had been taken care of, and I I got back to my house and his mom was on her knees crying in my lawn. And man, that was just the worst sight I've ever seen. I'm sorry I didn't mean to share all this deep dark shit with you, but essentially it's for those of you who don't know me and my story to understand me and my mental issues a little bit better. And rest in peace to him, and all the love to his mother. She's a beautiful, wonderful human. And she basically took me under her wing as like her second, third, no, sorry, it would be fourth son, because she's got two others. And I'm thankful for that woman. She's very strong. And I guess I'm just sharing that to give insight on somebody who's experienced something really hard and had to deal with it kind of in silence in a way over a long time, because essentially, like I was saying in the first episode, there's not many people who can relate to a situation like that. Don't get me wrong. I've I've got other friends that do, but at the end of the day, those are the only people who really understand me for what I have to deal with on the day to day. So I don't want it to be misconstrued with the idea that I'm better or my struggles are worse than somebody else's, because I get that things are things are hard for everybody, man. And I know that everybody goes through different stuff, but I I think that the more that we can understand each other's stories and each other's history, the better we can move a relationship or a friendship forward in the future. This world's a beautiful place, man. And it's taken me a long time to see that, you know? When you lose somebody like in a situation like that, you have this, at least I did. I had this really big feeling of guilt and just like, man, I really didn't help that person out in the way that I could have. And I'm starting finally to get to the point in my life that I realize that's not the case. It's it's a thing called survivor's guilt for those of you who don't know about it out there. Survivor's guilt is the yeah, it's just the guilt you feel when you're in a situation like that and you're the one who lives. And I'm not saying that I'm not happy that I'm alive, because I'm very happy that I'm alive. And this past week really showed me why it is that I am happy that I'm alive. But with those thoughts, with those thoughts of, man, how could I have helped? How could I have been better? You don't get answers, you know? And while these lessons are really hard to learn in the moment, they teach us a lot about what it means to be human and what it means to live, what it means to die, and what it means to care. Excuse me. And truly what it means to not care at all, which is probably the harder concept to really grasp. Like, we as a society, I feel like now we're so ingrained with like oh, I don't care. I'm doing my own thing. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, which is great. It's fine. But I don't think that comes without maybe a little bit of in non-genuineness. I don't know the word for it, but it's like people put on this front that they don't care. I'm not trying to put that on anymore. I'm not trying to make it seem like I don't want people to care. I do want people to care. Um, and I want people to know that I care. But I want people to know that I can't always care for them in the way that they need it. And maybe sometimes that the way that they feel like they're caring for me isn't the way that I need it. And that's okay. That's totally fine. It's more about showing genuine thought and genuine just compassion and empathy for another human. But when it comes to times where you're struggling with stuff, it's not always easy to take the advice. It's not always easy to actually, maybe sometimes it's easier to give the advice because you feel like, if you can't help yourself, maybe you can help somebody else, and it's not always the worst thing. I've tried to use that technique to help me feel better. But I think it's creating a balance between the two of them. It's for me right now, I'm being a little bit selfish in how I've been treating life, because essentially if I'm not, I'm never gonna be that loving, genuine person that people know me to be. I'm not gonna be able to be that, 'cause I feel like I have a certain way that people kind of see me. And I'm not going to be able to be that person unless I'm able to heal myself first. And once I'm able to heal myself, then hopefully I'll be able to help others. But in the meantime, I'm not like completely, like just shushing away other people's problems. It's just sometimes I don't have an answer to their problems. And I'm getting myself into a mental state of realizing that that's okay if I don't have those answers, because I haven't always had the answers for myself. You can't expect the answers from really anything. You can only expect, you can only try your best. You can only be good to yourself and be good to others too. But you got to start it yourself, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm I'm doing this podcast to share parts of myself with people, and it's one of those things where it's like I don't have the social or mental battery to try to formulate relationships, new friendships, anything like that right now. I just like I got to focus on me. I got to take care of myself first. Cuz I know once I do that and once I feel comfortable enough in my own skin, that I'll be I'll be ready to help others, and I'll be ready to be there for others again. And that's a good thing to realize. It's uh, something to shoot for. It's one of those goals. Um, yeah, man, and like one of those, I guess a couple of those goals that I had for this week, I've definitely been taken care of, and I'm proud of myself for that. And to those of you listening, be proud of yourselves. Take an inventory on where you started to where you are now. And if you're not where you want to be, I'm sure there's a lot of road in front of you. Actually, I know there's a lot of road in front of you. Just don't give up. Nobody's story is exactly the same, and nobody's path is going to be the same. But keep on yours. Assist others on their path along the way if you can, if you're feeling up to it. If you can't, don't be hard on yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're the only person who can be the hardest on yourself. And the easier you can be on yourself, the easier the world around you becomes. And I truly believe that. So yeah, write down some goals, take a mental inventory. If you feel like nothing, you got nothing going for you, just dig deep within. Don't think about what anybody else is going to say about it. Just dig deep within and ask yourself, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I'm passionate about, and what is it that I care about the most? And whatever that is for you, run with that, man. Make it your make it your whole life. Make it your whole life, and at the end of it, you won't feel like you're unaccomplished, because you set out for the thing specifically that was a passion to you, something that really meant a lot to you, and you deserve that for yourself, man. But yeah, that's about all I got. I'm sorry I got a little deep. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I just I like sharing my thoughts on things, and I feel a lot of genuine solace in doing so. It gives me something to look forward to, and I just feel a lot of relief afterwards. And so yeah, like let me know what you think. And I hope you guys have a great week. Thank you guys for listening, and This is another episode of Kicking It with Kwaydr. Much love. Peace out.